Okay. This is the welcome everyone to the District 9 candidate forum for the 2022 race election cycle. My name is Sean Saldana. I'm a reporter / producer with the Texas Standard, which is a part of KUT, and that's who's hosting this. And I guess to give a bit of a recap, District 9, it's located in sort of the heart of Austin, Texas, includes large swaths of the University of Texas campus, a lot of the downtown area, a lot of these old Austin neighborhoods, and that is what y'all are looking to represent. Let's lay down some of the ground rules here and I guess some of the format. So each candidate get 60 seconds of an opening statement, also 60 seconds to respond to each question. If you mention another candidate by name, that person will get 30 seconds to respond, and there will be no closing statement. So please do not try and sneak them in. That happens sometimes. In terms of general rules of conduct, just play nice, right? No ad hominems, no mudslinging. It seems like we're generally on pretty good terms here, so I don't think that'll be a problem. I have a 1-minute timer for everyone. I will start to shake my hands at about the 50-second mark, so you have about 10 seconds to wrap up. And yeah, so we'll start opening statements. And I'll just call them out as they appear on my screen here. Who's this joining? Okay. If that is Linda Guerrero, another candidate running, we will introduce her afterward. But we'll start with Zoe. Opening statement.
Yeah, appreciate. Oh, they left. Appreciate it, Sean. Appreciate y'all for hosting this event. My name is Zahib Qadri, candidate for Austin City Council in District 9. I'm running out of a deep love of Austin and also a commitment to serve that was instilled in me as a child. Both of my parents being immigrants, coming into this country to give back through medicine. And I thought that was going to be my way of giving back. And, throughout my adult years, I realized I could give back in another way. I went to school at UT. I met my wife here in Austin. We've gotten married. We've put down roots. But it's a city that unfortunately doesn't work for everyone. Whether you look at our housing crisis, whether you look at the lack of equitable transit, whether you look at our environmental crisis, or just a general lack of equity, Austin can be that city that we claim to be, but we're far from it. And that's why I'm running. And we've built a broad coalition as we look at 3 days out until early vote. Whether it be our, supporters, our grassroots supporters having the most individual donors and donations, being the first campaign, local campaign in the state to unionize.
Thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, cool. A minute.
Greg, 1 minute.
Thanks for having me. My wife, Morgan, and I, we've lived here for over 40 years. I've been in private business for 35 years. I was motivated to run for District 9 for a couple of different reasons. My wife and I, we don't have kids, and it was initially a way for me to see if I could give back to a city that's been so good to us. And then more importantly, I started looking at the crisis in leadership that I believe that we currently have on the city council, and it's motivated me to take my skill set, my experiences with the management of over 3,000 people in my private business life to try to move the city forward. Appreciate having the opportunity to talk about it today.
Okay, Ben Leffler, 1 minute.
Good afternoon, y'all. I'm Ben Leffler. Thanks for joining on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I am a native Austinite, and I've lived in Central Austin for all of my days. I currently live in Cherrywood with my wife and our 2-year-old Sonny. And I love Austin, Texas, but we have not planned for and prepared for the growth of this city effectively, and that's caused sprawl, displacement, and mounting environmental impacts. I went to the OBJ School of Public Affairs. I worked in the city auditor's office as well as in a city council office, and I know how the city works and that electing the right people really does make a difference. I've also served on my neighborhood association and co-founded a nonprofit to raise funds for awesome progressive organizations here in Austin. So, as we're looking out, we have incredible opportunities over the next, over this council term. We're going to have Project Connect. We're going to have potentially a revamp of our highway. These are opportunities to make Austin a much more equitable, inclusive city. And that's why I'm running. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Kim Olson.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Kim Olson, running for City Council District 9. I was born here, grew up here, and have had a lot of fun over the years, and it's just kind of not fun right now. It seems like our current lack of leadership has built up a house of cards, and while everything is skyrocketing price-wise, our quality of life has decreased, crime has increased, and we're not sure when our next blackout or our next boil water notice is. I really want to go back to the bare bones and fix this. And most importantly, I've enjoyed a lifetime of policy work, successful, responsible policy that I've worked on. I've worked for several elected officials and represented several other associations and nonprofits to pass responsible, sustainable, and good policy. I've received quite a few awards on it. I also went to the LBJ school after working on a few campaigns, and that's why I'm non-affiliated. I don't belong to a party because I realized I like policy over politics. Made the switch and never came back. Thank you.
Tom Wald.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Hi, my name is Tom Wald, and I'm running for D9, and I ask for your vote. I've been living in Austin since '99, visiting much of my life. Moved to Cherrywood in 2005 and have been active in my neighborhood since then, both with the neighborhood association and the planning team. For the last 16 years, I've been leading efforts on walking, biking, ADA access, affordability issues, accountability at the city, and working at City Hall. I've been there hundreds of times. And I think that one of the things that has brought a lot of the people to D9, I would suspect most of D9 voters have moved to D9 in those last 16 years. And one of the things that's brought them here is the walkability and bikeability. And I'm proud to say that we're a nationally recognized bicycling city. I want to bring that experience to City Hall. I feel like I would be ready, best positioned, day one, to work on our housing affordability crisis, to lead on regional mobility, and make our region a truly multimodal, walkable, bikeable, transit accessible region.
Thank you. Joa, 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Joa Spearman, and I'm running for City Council District 9. I think we have a phenomenal set of candidates in this field, but the thing that differentiates me is that I have very deep experience both collaborating and problem solving. And I think that those are the two most important skills that we need in District 9. We have a lot of issues around affordability, around equity, around mobility, and we need collaboration to solve them. The city alone is not going to solve all these problems. We need to bring in the nonprofit community. We need to bring in the private sector. And I'm proud to have the support of people like Colin Wallace, the CEO of the Austin Parks Foundation, Paul Scott, the CEO of Health Alliance for Austin musicians, along with business leaders. And I think that background, that coalition is going to be really essential in making sure that we're leading this city into the future. We're addressing the problems that we have today, but we're also bringing the right, again, collaboration and problem solving mentality to this seat. And I'm looking forward to doing that and ask for your support. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Zena Mitchell, 1 minute on the clock.
Hello, and how fun to be here today. I'm running for City Council because I can't ignore the unequal distribution of resources any longer. I've seen what 15 years of decisions based on profit have made this city look and feel like. If you go to my website, you'll see that I'm not making promises. I'm offering solutions based on human needs. I don't believe that housing is a commodity. I believe that it's a need, it's an essential basic thing that we all need. I'm a little frustrated by how many people have to leave the city that have worked here and have created this, what's made Austin so cool, myself, my family being one of them. My husband and I lived here for 30 years and raised our kids here. And we've had to say goodbye to them because they can't afford to live here anymore.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the opening statement portion of this. Next, we're going to move on to some submitted questions. And I guess some helpful context here. People who submit questions to KUT for District 9 races are voters. Those are people who turn out to vote. So answer these very carefully. So David, this question comes from David. The Great Resignation has hit city government. What will you do to fill staffing vacancies and retain qualified city staff and first responders? We will start with Zoe. 1 minute.
Yeah. Do you mind repeating the question one more time? I apologize.
Yeah, basically, the Great Resignation has affected city government, and what will you do in the city council seat to attract and retain staff? That's retention is also a big part of it.
Yeah, I think it's important to treat staff well. Staff asked for a pay raise to $22 an hour. The city, and they fought for 22. The city gave them 20. I think leveling up the pay grade for city staff is really important. I think you mentioned city services. EMS workers wanted 27 for a minimum wage for a job that they're overworked and underpaid, and they got a 14-cent increase. And I think that's a slap on the face, not only to our EMS workers, but also to our firefighters. And the more strain that we give these two departments, the more strain that we have to our police force. So I think it's not about giving folks what they don't deserve. It's about being equitable and giving them what they deserve and they've worked so hard for.
Thank you. Greg Smith, city staffing shortage. How would you address it?
Well, I think we would all agree that there's not a shortfall of money available to attract the world-class talent that we need in all of the departments. And so a solid look at, a marketing plan that allows us to get to access to those that want to move here is something that we certainly need to do. We've got to pay our staff top dollar. And that is inclusive of all of the emergency workers. And, one of the things that I'm in real fear of is that we have, we've borderline ruined the relationship between the city council and the police department. And, that really scares me as a resident. And there's got to be some real repairing done there before we start to attract those types of folks to want to work for the city again.
Thank you. Ben Leffler, Great Resignation, City Hall. How would you solve it?
Yeah, so this is hitting, not just our public safety departments, but all of our departments. And so we absolutely need to continue to raise the minimum wage. But unfortunately, what we know is that it's going to be really difficult to get, within our limited budget to, $30, $35 an hour, or really what, a livable, truly livable wage in Austin is. I think we can look at the city, currently how it's budgeted, potentially, budgeted positions in certain departments that aren't filled right now to try to find some efficiencies there. But ultimately, we have to bring down the cost of housing in this city. Like right now, the cost of housing is just, it's pushing people out, and the city can't afford to pay folks, $100,000, $150,000, or what's necessary to, find housing in this town. So we need to look at how we can build on city property. We need to look at how we can make the permitting process more efficient and update the land development code to incentivize more workforce housing, and also working with the private sector where we can to, catch up to where we are far behind on our housing blueprint. We should be prioritizing city employees and first responders with those housing.
Thank you. Kim Olson, how would you address staffing shortages?
First of all, I one of my main concerns and questions with the city is the permits. In and of itself, we've got the most expensive permit process in the country, and the most numerous in the state for sure. Basically, I don't understand why we're paying so much money to the city and we can't pay our employees. This makes no sense whatsoever. I really want full transparency to figure out where this money's coming from, and a full-blown outside audit conducted just to see where our money's going and why we don't have any employees and why we can't beef up the programs that need it, like permitting systems, and get it functioning better. And all in all, I do support any kind of economic development, and it's not just about bringing businesses here, but they're not going to come here unless we have a skilled, capable workforce. So we need to figure out where our problems are. Full transparency, build back trust with the city and people, and full transparency moving forward. Thank you.
Tom, how would you address the staffing issues at City Hall?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's very multifaceted. So just want to touch briefly on housing. Of course, housing affordability is a big issue when people are having to drive in from Kyle, Bastrop, Round Rock to City of Austin jobs. That really puts a strain on all their regular activities. One of the things that I've done in my work is co-founded People United for Mobility Action. We were instrumental in getting a $300 million anti-displacement fund in order to ensure that service industry, that working class people can still afford to live in Austin and live near transit. This is going to be huge, especially as our transit system gets built out. I would say beyond housing affordability, I mean, that's something that's affecting every city, but beyond that, at our city, we need to work toward pay parity, and we need to signal that to our employees. So pay parity between the public employees and private sector. So, and then I would say too, that the issue is different for each department. Some departments, we should really allow for more remote work options. Library workers aren't mental health care providers. So,
1 minute.
yeah. So I didn't have a second seconds. Thank you.
Okay, Joa, how would you address this issue?
Thank you. So many great things have been said around pay parity, using city land to build workplace housing. What I want to talk about is revenue, because what a lot of this is coming out of this mentality of scarcity that the city has around not having enough funding to increase wages for city employees, increase wages for public safety professionals. When I disagree with that, you drive around anytime in the city, and I'm not talking about public parks and green spaces. I'm talking about there are parking lots, there are parcels of land that the city owns that we could be leveraging to generate revenue through either building housing or commercial developments, do different things that will allow us to generate additional income that would allow us to better employ and staff our departments by better wages. So I think that there are a number of things that we have not done as a city that would address both the wage disparities that exist, and then also the openings and the fact that not enough people can afford to live in the city because there's not enough access to land to build adequate housing here. So I think that leveraging the city on land will actually help us do that.
Thank you. Zena Mitchell, how would you address staffing issues with the city?
Well, first, I think it's very critical that we have the staff to administer the services in the city, for sure. That's pretty frustrating. I taught at Northeast Early College High School and lived in the neighborhood, so I think it does make a big difference if you live where you work. Right now, the median family income in the city of Austin to qualify for affordable housing is $53,000 for a family of 3. I think the city has raised it just recently to 60% of that. So I think we have to provide affordable housing for more income levels. So I think the housing is part of it. I agree with Joa that we need to leverage some of the properties that we own, so that the city of Austin owns. So let's say we built an apartment complex on one of those properties. We could make those rent to own properties. So people that are living here could build some equity until they could afford a house that's for sale in the city of Austin.
Thank you. Okay, and then now we're actually going to snake back the other way around and go in reversed order just to mix it up a little bit. So we will be starting again with you, Zena Mitchell. And this is another user submitted question. And this comes from Reagan. This is basically how to address the issue of police presence and the lack of traffic enforcement in the city. Traffic deaths have been one of the through lines of issues facing the city. And I guess, what's the solution there? Zena Mitchell, start us off.
Thank you. Good question. I think there's a lot that can be done with the police force that will ease the stress of the police force, along with delivering a better service. So we could have a separate police force to address traffic issues, as well as maybe we could start having tiers of police forces, of the employees in the police force that address different things. And one could be the traffic and other people could work on, maybe that's how it already is, but a lot of our candidates have gone on rides with police officers saying that they're not doing as much policing, they're doing more, responding more to mental health crisis. So that's what I would suggest, is breaking up the responsibilities of police officers.
Joa.
Yes, the number one area in which the city has influence over policy that shapes any area, whether that's traffic deaths, traffic congestion, you name it, is housing policy. And so, I'm very privileged to have gone the last 5 years without owning a car here in Austin. I know that not everyone can do that, but I do think that the city has not tried to maximize building and accommodating developments that would foster more housing for people who are willing to live car-free, people who can embrace the walkability and even bikeability of the city. And so I think that that's an area that we can focus on to reduce both traffic congestion and traffic deaths, because right now we're obviously in the state of Texas, which is a very car-reliant state. But there are things that we can do in Austin, especially here in District 9, the most dense kind of central part of the city, to accommodate people getting less dependent on their cars. And I think that's where we should start.
Thank you. Tom Wall.
Sean, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, basically the question is about the lack of police presence or perceived lack of police presence in traffic enforcement, how you would address that.
Okay, so it is specific to traffic enforcement. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I've been working on road safety, like I said before, for 16 years. And I think the longer term solution really is to provide safer roads, the actual infrastructure of the roads. But enforcement absolutely does play a role. And I think that there's I'm hearing this from criminal justice advocates that there's really, the police could really step up with DUI enforcement. It's one of the least racially biased enforcement actions that police take. And so I think there's a lot of room for that. I think that during the pandemic, people built up bad habits with speeding when there wasn't as much congestion. And so I think we do need to set good behaviors on that again. The other thing I will say is that we do have a Vision Zero program, which is focused specifically on reducing and eliminating serious injuries and traffic fatalities. And I think that is a good conduit for how to shape the policy in regards to police. For example, they are taking softer approaches of, like, they've just purchased many dozens of those speed signs. And I think,
okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, sorry, trying to.
It's a lot. There's a lot to get into. Kim.
Hi, yeah. How I don't really know how, with the dwindling police force that we have right now, we don't have enough officers to cover what we need to, and I don't think we're going to until we actually build back an alliance with them and get a contract passed. I mean, you can't really hire people if you don't know what you're going to make next year, what benefits you have. We need better police, and now we're getting the worst of the worst if we can get them. So, I think we have to focus, not to mention crimes at at all-time high. It's just ridiculous. We definitely have to get back trust built with the police, get numbers at least close to this, appropriate for the size of our city, especially if we're talking about adding density. That's just not going to go well. We have got to get everything back, get all of everything back together, and get those police officers' contracts finalized and funded, and try to get us back to a normal city. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben.
Yeah, so I think we absolutely need to understand how to fully, fill the vacancies in our police department, of which there are some around 285 or something. But when we do staff that, I think those officers' time is better spent on, investigating, preventing gun crimes and violent crime and things like that. And when we're looking at traffic safety, the built environment is so important to that. We have roads like Airport, which is essentially just a through highway, and people are going 60 miles an hour because it's built that way. We know that, converting one-way streets to two ways is a way to calm traffic. And so whether we need to take some lanes out or add protected bike lanes or other transit options, widen sidewalks, all of these, built environment can help, calm traffic and make it safer. Adding more crosswalks and pedestrian hydrant beacons for folks to be able to safely get across streets. Those are real opportunities there. And, I think that more so than traffic enforcement by police officers themselves, building our roads, giving folks options to travel without a car is where we can really start to really cut down on fatalities with pedestrians.
Thank you. Greg Smith.
You can't want more and have less. I mean, we want more presence, and we want more traffic control, yet we've got less police officers than we've had in 20 years. And the numbers just don't lie. We're 280 officers down, as Ben said, with the potential of losing another 340 by the end of March. I mean, that number is not doable for this question. We cannot provide the type of safety that is needed in all aspects of public safety when we've got numbers that are dwindling like that. Doesn't work.
Okay. Zoe.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you if you could repeat the question one more time. I'm that annoying candidate that will always ask for the question to be repeated.
No, this is good. This is good. This is good. I'll need a restate. We got a lot of folks to move through.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, this is a question from a user-submitted question about how to address the perceived lack of police presence, and then more specifically toward traffic enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this has potentially already been said, but when I was an undergrad at UT, my junior year, I was walking in West Campus and a car hit me and I went through the windshield, and when they put on their brakes, I went flying out. I dropped that semester. I was, on, heavily medicated for several months. And then that following summer, I had a friend of mine who was hit by a truck on Guad, and she had her leg amputated, knee down. So for me, when it comes to things like that, we need more crosswalks, sidewalks. We need to be more of a pedestrian friendly city. I don't think we need more policing like in terms of traffic enforcement. We need to make sure that our police are guardians, not warriors, but also making sure that if it's a mental health crisis, is as simple as a routine traffic stop, we have other individuals, other departments there, so that burden isn't falling on cops who are often aren't trained to deal with such circumstances.
Wonderful. And then we have a new addition to the forum here, Miss Linda Guerrero. So you have 1 minute to respond. If somebody mentions you by name, 30 seconds as a rebuttal, vice versa. Don't name call, use the chat box, etc. But yeah, did you need me to repeat the question, or are you good to go? You're muted. Okay, well, while you're unmuting, basically the question is about how to address the perceived issue of lack of police presence and traffic enforcement. What you would do if elected.
I'm on. Sorry about that. I'm flustered from trying to get here on time. Bottom line, can you hear me now? I feel like, yes, we do have to address the fact that we have so many vacancies with the APD, but also another situation would be public safety alerts that we used to do back in the day. We'd have different commercials come out, and we would be able to do these public safety for the community, get their buy-in. And what I've been noticing is mainly people on the street are running red lights. They're just blowing through all these red lights trying to get to the next street. And that's been causing for me a lot of issues. Besides the APD, I have to say that when they used to have the camera on at signals, and I don't know what that system was, and then they stopped doing that, it made me slow down tremendously, just knowing that my car could be caught on a camera.
Okay. Well, and then let me add one more. I forgot to add this. Whenever I'm doing this means you have 10 seconds left. So we're moving on to the next question here. We will start with you, Ms. Guerrero, as well. And this is basically, affordability is the sort of headline issue of this election cycle. And I guess as the city is transitioning into this new era of political leadership, how should we be thinking about how to address affordability? Where are the pain points? So Ms. Guerrero.
Okay. I think there's a lot of different choices that we can start making quickly. One of them is I would like to go to commercial areas that are already in that zone and give them entitlements to increase height, if they don't have the ability to have mixed use, to then give them those entitlements. Another thing is that when you talk about affordability, without subsidized approach, density does not automatically create affordability. So we have to look at the MFI. We have to go down to 60% MFI so we can reach the people that are most in need. 80% is showing that it's not helping those that are most in need right now. So we have to figure out a way that we've got to go to 65%. We've got to help situations to increase entitlements so that they will be able to build and give us additional housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoe, the issue of affordability, where the pain points are, how to address it, etc.
Yeah, I think long-term with the affordability crisis is looking at a rewrite of the land development code, which hasn't been updated since 1984. I think in the short term, and I think some of this was mentioned in the first question, actually, we can look at expediting the permitting process. That process often falls on the homeowner and the renter, and it's a financial burden. Giving more autonomy to homeowners to build things like ADUs, building off of our VMU2 and affordability unlock programs. I don't know, giving tax incentives to folks who build green and build solar, and then just making sure that the folks who give so much to the city, whether it be our construction workers, whether it be healthcare workers, teachers, they have a place to stay and a place to live. And I think if it means collaborating with folks to build housing on AISD properties for teachers and staff, I think that's definitely something we should look at, and as well as other departments and other individuals, and making sure we have housing for folks who give so much to the city.
Wonderful. Greg Smith.
We have to manage what we control, and we need to do that day one from the new council. And what we control are the fees and the process. Everybody that's on this Zoom call and every other candidate that I've listened to during these candidate forums says that the process has to be changed. The culture of the process has to change. And so District 9 voters have the opportunity to choose the leader that they believe that can create that change. And so again, we all agree. If we all agree, then this has got to be priority number one to start making a dent in the affordability crisis. We've got to change the process. It's got to be customer friendly. We've got to be obsessed with the change.
Great, thank you. Ben Leffler.
Yeah, I look at this in sort of three buckets, and one being the code. The code right now really incentivizes the most expensive types of housing. So how can we make it more equitable and make it easier to build duplexes and quadplexes and tenplexes across the city? Because we need all types of housing at all income levels across the city. That I would also look at how we can expand our density bonus programs, especially along corridors, so folks can, have an affordable house and not necessarily have to have a car. That includes, looking at compatibility as well as parking requirements. Parking spaces are really expensive and they add cost to housing. So decoupling parking from the units would be a big thing to do. Secondarily, the sort of red tape and permitting, I've been estimated the permitting process adds 20% cost per unit. So if we can just cut that down, that's a huge opportunity. And then fees as well. And then finally, partnerships, building on city land, partnering with the private sector as well as UT, ACC, AISD, Travis County to address these shared affordability issues and build more housing.
Kim Olson, 1 minute.
Yes, the affordability issue has been at the top of everybody's mind, and it brings me back to the building permits. I mean, again, we have the most expensive permits in the country and the most numerous in the state. We have got to figure out why and where this money is going. Also, the time delays on the permitting process is actually forcing people out of business, as we've seen with several of our mom and pop businesses. Lastly, I really don't think it's working the way they intended to, because a lot of people are just barely hanging on to their homes, their mortgages and rents. At the same time, you're basically creating this death spiral of pricing people out to bring others in. And that's just not a sustainable program long term, obviously. Anyway, thank you.
Great. Mr. Tom Wald, 1 minute.
Thanks, Sean. So part of this is having the right positions and bringing them to council. And then there's also building consensus on council and working with city staff and community leaders. And I bring that to the table. In 2023, I'd be the best position candidate to start day one on solutions that we can absolutely start working on right away. So one of those is expanding affordability unlock. That is the city's program that allows people, individuals and developers to build income restricted units. And the more units we can build that way, the better and quicker we can get to meeting our housing blueprint goals. And that is really the thing. We need to build enough housing to meet the demand and make sure that we're building income restricted units as well. Some other things that have proven very successful, including in Minneapolis, is eliminating car parking requirements. It costs to build car parking, it raises the cost of housing, and it also makes it harder to fit housing in. Beyond that, there's some other solutions here that have been mentioned as well, and I support those.
Great. Joa, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. As you can hear from the number of candidates, there are a lot of great policies that we can put in place around compatibility, around parking requirements, different things that will allow us to get more affordability. But I think it's also important to address the latency that we've seen from council. We've especially in D9, we've had representation that has been very late, and I think to enact those types of the policies that we need to address affordability. Even in this field, there's a project. Ms. Guerrero was speaking about getting to 65% MFI, and there was a project that happened in D9 called Katie Lofts that she initially opposed, and 60 of the 64 units in that project were for people up to 60% MFI. So it's exactly the kind of project that we're talking about needing in this community, and we need people in this community. We need someone in District 9 who is going to support those types of projects, and whether that's nonprofits like Foundation Communities or that's developers like Katie Lofts, or we need to get those kinds of projects in our communities, and that's something that I'm going to support.
Thank you, Joe. Ms. Guerrero, you have been mentioned by name. You've been called out by name. 30 seconds.
Thank you. I did not oppose the project. In my letter to the Planning Commission, I opposed the fact that they said they could build Katie Lofts without changing the zoning. So in order to protect our neighborhood plan, I wanted them to then adhere to building it in the footage that would not increase the zoning, because they came back to us and said they could build it in the zoning that was already embedded in our neighborhood plan. I didn't say I opposed the project ever.
Thank you. All right, back to the regular flow. Zena Mitchell, question, I'll tee it up one more time because we've had a bit of a break here. Basically the issue of affordability, how to approach the issue, what needs to get done. 1 minute.
Yes, I would limit investor profits through the homestead property tax. So based on how many years you live in your home is what the percentages of you could make on the sale of your home. Right now, the city of Austin has an affordable home program where if you qualify for that affordable home program, when you sell the house, you're limited to 2% profit. So if we can do it to low income families, we certainly can do it to investors. So I would limit investor profits. I would also limit how many real properties a person can own. Fannie Mae, the federal government, says that the lender that guarantees loans says that 5 mortgages is the maximum a person can own. So I would limit how many real properties a person can own, because when I was canvassing, many people told me about how many Airbnbs were in their neighborhoods. So I think that's decreasing the housing availability. And I would also do the rent to own properties.
Thank you. And we will stick on you for this next question. Homelessness, there's been a lot of the issue of homelessness has gotten a lot more visibility in the past 2 years here in Austin, Texas, and it's sort of agreed upon by many people that it's a big issue and the city hasn't done a great job of addressing it. If elected, how would you address it?
I would use the property at St. John's and IH-35 immediately to move the arch from downtown to a bigger facility that's been empty for 10 years. And I would make it a homeless environment right away so we could start having resources there for the homeless people. I would also work with Foundation Communities, which is right across the street, has a facility right across the street, and Communities First. So I would use the property at St. John's and IH-35 immediately.
Great. Joa, issue of homelessness?
Yes, I mean, this is obviously one of the most important issues, not only in D9, but in the city of Austin. And I think this is a perfect example of where we need collaboration. The solutions and the resources that City Hall has access to are not enough for the scale of the problem. And we've been very latent to address this issue, while cities like Houston and Boston have been at work for years addressing chronic homelessness. I do like the housing first approach we've taken in recent years. And what I want to see is more projects like Project Transitions, which is something that it's near the School for the Blind that I was able to be a donor in. And it's an example of a project where it's meeting both the health and human services need and a housing need. Wraparound services are there on site. And the funding came from a mix of state, federal funding, city, county funding, and then also private donors. And increasingly, we're going to be needing to lean on that collaboration to address this issue. Because this is not something that's unique to Austin. It's to a lot of the major cities, and we need collaboration to make sure we can solve this problem.
Thank you. Tom Wald, 1 minute.
Thank you. Homelessness has affected my family, and so it's an important issue to me. Immediately, if I were elected, I would direct city staff to make a plan to lift up the unhoused to some next level of shelter within 12 to 18 months, whatever resources we can bear within that time. I will also say homelessness is a part of a larger picture of unaffordability. Our expensive cities are the ones where we see the unhoused. And the reason why is because the richest bid the next tier of income down on below. And then issues like drug addiction, mental health issues, and domestic violence end up being those triggering events that make people unhoused and put them into a worse situation. I do absolutely believe in the housing first model. And so we should need to year after year continue to subsidize housing and build so that we can eventually house the unhoused. And I think, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Ms. Olson, 1 minute.
Yes. Yes. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is basically just a broad question about the issue of homelessness and how to address it in the city over the past few years. We can circle back if you'd like.
I think I got it, but we're
Okay.
be too sure. Sorry, without talking, it's hard. Yes. First of all, there's several levels. I think there's different levels of homelessness. We're talking about different things. Those that we have camping, and those that are more long-term unhoused, and those that are just transitioning, and it's just a happenstance, an unfortunate one at that. I really think we need mental health, especially with our dwindling police force. We need something like the Haven for Hope down in San Antonio, where it's a community center that has different segments for the different various needs of the homeless, but most importantly, it has mental health. It also gives us a number to call when for anything, for anybody in the community, should they need any mental health services, and maybe give us a 211 number instead of a 911 to take some of the force off the police department. Thank you. Sorry about the dog.
No worries. Ben Leffler.
Yeah, so this is obviously a humanitarian crisis and a really multifaceted challenge. We're not the only community dealing with this, but there are things that we can do much better here in Austin. And the HEAL initiative has been effective. We just need to continue to fund that and accelerate folks to move through it and land in permanent housing. I think we need to track the data a little bit better. We did see in a recent article that upwards of 28% or so folks actually fell out of the program without housing, and understanding why that happened and how we can better serve through that program is important. But then also serving as a better conduit for the dozens of nonprofits that are serving elements of this community. We have amazing organizations in Austin that are providing services, and I think the city can serve as a better conduit between those who need the services and the organizations providing. And then mental health services as well. We ultimately just need more permanent supportive housing beds, 2,000 to 3,000 is staff estimate. And so we need to get those built as soon as possible.
Mr. Greg Smith, you have 1 minute.
When I decided to run for city council, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the expert at any of these crisis situations. And having said that, I think that we're getting ready to have access to hundreds of millions of dollars to not only improve but potentially eliminate this situation that all of us on this call are deeply passionate about and want to provide a solution. For that amount of money, we can't get it wrong. We cannot swing and miss. And so the next D9 representative has to make sure that all of the really, really smart people that have proven experience with dealing successfully with eliminating homelessness are in the room when we make those decisions.
Great, thank you. Zoe.
Yeah, I've always been of the mind that it says a lot about a society and how we treat our most underserved community. And I think in that sense, Austin has failed our in-house community. I think it starts off with a housing first approach, but when we even talk about that, we need to make sure that housing is not in areas where there's transit, food, or medical deserts. So just not somewhere and just saying, hey, we did it. Making sure you put folks in a place where they can still excel and succeed, and making sure that wherever you do place them, you are getting them any sort of mental health or substance abuse care that they might need, because a lot of our in-house population suffers from those two ailments. But then, I think it's also worth noting that there are some unhoused folks that aren't suffering from substance abuse or mental health illnesses. They're just the working poor, and that just goes down to our larger discussion housing crisis that's leaving so many folks behind, and making sure we're at the forefront of solutions and not just talk.
Thank you. Linda Guerrero, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I think, of course, we need to look at housing first. It's a crisis where we need to stabilize those that are most in need, and that we use our money immediately that we have available. We've got to get in there and start providing this housing as soon as possible and finding more space for them. One of the things that I've seen, and I've been talking to boots on the ground, is that, for example, homeless people are getting vouchers, but there's no one that will accept their vouchers. There's a disconnect between the program set up to be the safety net for the homelessness. So the first thing I want to do is get in there and have a roundtable discussion about why all of these agencies aren't pulling together more tightly and figuring out where the leaks or the holes are, so that we can push forward all of these great programs that we're trying to use and access for them. And so when I talk to the boots on the ground people, they're saying there's a huge disconnect just between the people trying to help them. So again, the wraparound services, housing first, and stabilize is critical. Thank you.
Okay, all right. We have this, we'll wrap up here. And again, no closing statements, answer the question, stick to the script. Been good so far. Let's get in and out. So last thing I want to ask about is Project Connect, major initiative undertaken by the city in terms of light rail and buses and et cetera, et cetera. So the cost of this has ballooned. It was originally around 7 billion. Now it's around 10. Project is a long way out. It would involve the eminent domain of many beloved Austin businesses, Dirty Martin's being one example. We've heard some proposals of let's put Project Connect back on the ballot for voters to vote on. And we've heard some proposals saying let's scale down the size of it. Others saying this is what it costs to just, be bold on public transit. How should we be thinking about the issue of Project Connect going forward? We'll start with Miss Linda Guerrero.
Thank you so much. I think my greatest concern is the environmental possibilities and unintended consequences with Project Connect, especially the idea of digging under Lady Bird Lake. I have a huge concern about that. When I was chair of the Environmental Commission, twice we asked for briefings, and since they're only at 30%, they couldn't really tell us details that we were most interested in hearing about. When I do talk to other people about the ballooning costs, they do continue to say this will not affect us, that it'll be done through federally grants, that we will not be affected, the taxpayer. That'll be interesting. I am concerned about eminent domain and small business owners and how they are going to be affected, because these business owners are usually renting from buildings, so they're not at the table. And so we have to find a way that we do make sure the displacement that is going to happen to those businesses is in fact. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zoe Kadri, 1 minute.
Sorry, I was struggling with unmuting myself. I think the city has taken a lot of missteps in the past, whether it be on homelessness or housing, and we're seeing the effects now. and we're seeing the price tag, right, on how to combat homelessness, how to combat this housing crisis. And you mentioned the Project Connect went from 7 to 10 billion. It's one of those things that it's necessary to do right by this city, because the city will only continue to grow. And if we keep putting this off, the price tag will only continue to get higher, and people will just only continue to suffer. There's parts in this city, I think District 9 has a level of privilege. I think we have a good amount of bike lanes and walkability and buses and the rail, but there's parts of Austin that don't have that, right? There's transit deserts, and there's folks that suffer, and their income, can they get to work, can they get their kid to school? And if we keep putting this off, people will continue to suffer and be pushed out of the city.
Thanks. Greg Smith.
We have to stay the course. I don't like that the cost is ballooning, but for now we've got to stay the course, and the opportunities to be able to build on density on those corridors and move people around and help the environment with less cars and safer streets. We've got to have the intestinal fortitude to continue to move forward. Having said that, every dollar that's spent has got to be accounted for, and there's got to be there's got to be somebody that's in a position to oversee every dollar. I mean, every single dollar, to make sure that it is trying to achieve the goals that are set for Project Connect.
And Mr. Leffler, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of Project Connect. I think, we've failed a rail bond in 2000 and 2014, and costs are never going to go down from here. I don't, it is unfortunate to see the cost estimates rise, but, we've seen cost estimates rise for every infrastructure project due to the pandemic and the sort of logistical challenges on our, supply chains. Project Connect represents not just sort of generational opportunity for our transit system, but also a huge opportunity to provide workforce housing with no car dependence that can get on a train and get downtown, which is great for the environment as well. I think it was so heartwarming and wonderful to see the $300 million of anti-displacement funding included in Project Connect. And I think we need to look at whether, we need to include some, anti-displacement funds for our local businesses as well. And if those numbers need to go up because the cost of the entire project has gone up. So we've got to get this through. We've got to get it done. This is just the biggest opportunity for our city that we're going to have in a long, long time.
Thank you. Kim Olson, you have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Project Connect is another smoking mirrors or cloak and dagger kind of project that needs full transparency. They haven't had a single mile marker of success to show. Way over budget, way behind time. Not to mention that most of the public was not aware. Well, and I do agree with everything Linda said as well, with the unintended consequences, the environment, and the eminent domain. Just to add that too. But I think most importantly, we do need to pull it back on the ballot, given the current state of no bad word affairs, and and the fact that people kind of got a little bit of hoodwinked into an 8% tax for the rest of duration. I think a lot of people assumed it was a bond and didn't realize they just raised their taxes permanently. I think a lot of people are upset and feel they were misguided, and another reason we need to rebuild trust with the people and full transparency of the city. Thank you.
Tom Wald, 1 minute.
I'm a huge proponent of Project Connect, and as I mentioned before, was part of the team that brought the $300 million of anti-displacement funding. Also, the nearly $460 million of walking and biking funding to support connectivity to transit as well. I believe that it was excellent decision from the framers of it to have a tax rate election, so the revenue will also rise along with the costs, not necessarily at the same rate. And so I do trust the staff of the transit agencies working on this to shape the project and build out the parts that we can. The most expensive increase was for the South Congress section, and maybe we can delay that a little bit until we can figure out some more cost-effective solutions or get a win at the state legislature to help decrease the cost. I think there's we're missing a permanent CEO at both of our local transit agencies, and that's one reason why I think it's really important to have leadership who's worked on transportation for so long on council to get us through this phase.
Great. And Mr. Joe Spearman?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to clear up the misconception because this was a tax rate election. So that meant on average, people are paying $8 and or sorry, $8.75 to do this. So that this project is not over budget. We elected and the majority of voters supported a slight increase in the tax rate in order to fund this project. So that's what's true here. So I just want to make sure that that misconception that this project is somehow over budget is not true. Second, what I would say is this is a foundational project, and KUT listeners and Austin Monitor especially would know that in 2000 there was a rail bond proposal that lost by less than 2,000 votes. Almost 50% of Austin voters supported it back then in 2000. 20 years later, it got the majority. So this is something that Austin voters have been waiting for years. We have a real opportunity to do something massive for our city, and we need to do it.
Great. And Zena Mitchell, close us out.
Yeah, I think everything, I'm a strong supporter of Project Connect. Like Joe has said, 20 years ago, if we would have done it, we would have been in much better shape than we are now. If we prolong this, it's only going to get worse. So I'm on board with Project Connect, and I'm agree with Linda also. I think that we do have to consider the environmental problems that's going under Lady Bird Lake does seem kind of questionable, but I think the Austin Transit Partnership, I think that'll be the group that looks over the money and works with us. So I think we're poised to take this on. And so I'm shocked that people are talking about it going back on the ballot.
All right, now I'm going to do what we in public radio call a back announce here. Do a couple, I want to thank everyone for showing up to the candidate forum. Quick reminder that voting starts on Monday. And yeah, you listeners have been hearing from the District 9 candidates for Austin City Council. So yeah, other than that, thanks for showing up, y'all.
Thanks for inviting us.
For having us.
Thank you.